So now we're going to see how to create a flex container. And before I show you how to create a flex container, I want to take a moment and just reflect upon containers in general. Because HTML, when you start to do layout, right, when you start to do layout, you really need to think about containers. And we've already been thinking about containers in some ways. We just haven't been talking about it like this. But when it comes to layout, when you're doing layout, thinking in terms of containers is going to help you tremendously. And until you start thinking in terms of containers, and how are you going to create things and where are you going to put them, until you start thinking in terms of containers, you're going to struggle. So you really have to start thinking in terms of containers. What's that mean? I have a new area here, 031, 01 container, 00 live coding, reflecting on containers. So when I go in here, right, we had the containers and items, and then containers, and I created a folder here, live coding, just so we could reflect on containers. And so here is an HTML page. Here's the HTML element, right? And in between the element, this is a container, and it's holding the head element and the body element. This is what the HTML container contains. And in the body element, we might have all kinds of HTML, and then we might have an area on our page like we might want the header, and that's a container, right? So we might say, hey, here is the header, what's going to be at the top of the page, kind of like that blue bar in that one thing. And we might want something over on the left of the header, like our logo, and we might want something over on the right of the header, like navigation. And so I could do like a div over on the left, and that would be one container. And then over on the right, I could do a nav, and that would be another container. And then inside the nav, I could say, okay, now I'm going to need my menu, right, my navigation or whatever. And so I could have another container, right? So the nav is like this little container holding all the navigation. And that's going to be over on the right of the header. And then the div is going to hold the logo. You know, so we might do image, right? Some image, and that'll be the logo over on the left. But you're thinking in terms of containers, right? The header is a container that's holding everything that's in the header of the web page. And then we want two different areas in that header. We want the logo and we want the navigation. All right, let's create a container to hold the logo. Let's create a container to hold the navigation. So that's what we did here. Created a container. Right? And then we'd have the logo over on the left, and then the navigation over on the right. And so we create these containers, and then we could position those containers. We can move them around. So we're going to position the header at the top of the page, and then within the header, we'll position the logo, this container right here. We'll say put all of that over on the left side of the header. And we'll position the navigation, put all of that over on the right side of the header. And so we're thinking in terms of containers. So that's just generally speaking. I wanted to take a moment and say, you got to start thinking in terms of containers when you do layout. And boxes, right? So this box, you could also say boxes. This box is going to hold, or this box / container, right? Whatever you want to call it. This box is going to hold the logo. We'll put that box over here. And then I'm going to create a little box to hold the navigation. And we're going to put that box over here. And both those two boxes are going to be right in the header. So what this allows you to do, just FYI, and I'm going to give you a little bit of preview, right? But I'm going to come here and create a CSS file, main.css. And to make this work with flexbox, so let's just look at it. First thing I need to do is here in my div, I'm just going to make each of these a div, okay, just to keep it simple. So there's the first one, and then this is the next one. And so that'd be stuff on the left, stuff on the right. And I'm doing that just because I want to do this. Div, and it'll be width of, 50 pixels, height, 50 pixels, background, color, red, okay? So right now, if we just look at this page, we should have two squares. And they should each be taking up a row. And we'll put a border on them so we can see. Border. I think we should go with like yellow, actually. And yeah, yellow's cool. And then border 2 pix solid blue. There we go. So let's take a look at this page. Boom. Right? So there are two little boxes. Cool. So we have those little boxes now. And I'm going to move this over. And cool, perfect. And that gave me a little bit more room to see all my code. All right, so now if I wanted to make this header a flex container, all I do is display flex. And when I do display flex, there's going to be a couple of flex properties which are set by default. So flex direction is going to be row, and we'll learn about this. And flex wrap will be no wrap. So that's the default settings which come, okay, with flexbox. This right here, flex direction row, flex direction wrap. So I'm just going to comment those out because those are the defaults, but that's what's being set by default. But display flex, this is how we make it a flex box. Now watch what happens when I hit refresh. Cool. It took each of those, and instead of being block elements, it put them into a row, right? Flex row. But they're jammed right next to each other. If I look at the border on my header, right, that's going to be taking up as much width as possible because it is a block level element. And these are all jammed to the left side of it. Well, is there some way that I could adjust this where these are not jammed right next to each other? So I could go over to my little guide, properties for the parent. There's display, and we made it a flex container. That's what makes it a flex container. Flex direction, and row is the default. Flex wrap, no wrap is the default. And then flex flow shorthand, but here's justify content. And look at what it does with those boxes. So let's do justify content space between and see just what the heck happens. There we go. And you ready? Are you ready? Kabam! Like, whoa, how cool is that? You're thinking in terms of containers. The header is a container here, right? And it's like, I'm going to have my logo and then my, navigation. All right, I'm going to create a container for my logo. I'm going to create a container for my navigation. I'm going to make this a flex container, which means that all immediate direct children will be flex items. And anything I set on my flex container, right? I set these properties like justify content. It's going to impact my children, my immediate direct children of that flex container. Like you could set all this stuff right here in left, right, center, space between, space around, and then you could get it to just lay out where you want it to lay out. It's totally cool. So I want to give you one more example of the power of display flex. And I'm going to do that right here, and I just am doing it kind of like as I'm creating this on the fly. And so flex container, and let's just put in a whole crap load of divs. And so we're going to put in like 20 divs. And then in our CSS, we'll give those divs a width of 100 pixels, a height of 100 pixels, a background color of yellow, and a border of 2 pix solid blue. And then if we look at that, split that vertically. Not horizontal, whatever that was. Split vertically. There we go. Sweet. And preview it. And we've got a bunch of divs, right? And my body could be a flex container. So I'm going to come in here and go body, display flex, and then come over here and refresh. And it put them all into a row, because remember the default properties are flex direction, row, and flex wrap, no wrap, right? Those are the default properties. Well, what happens if I turn this into wrap? Nice. So that's just the power of Flexbox. It's amazing. It's really cool. It's super. And all you have to do to set a flex container, to create a flex container, you got to think about what's your flex container and what are its flex children. All you do is display flex. That creates a flex container. And then you could start playing with any of the container properties and values, which are all listed on the left side of the CSS Tricks Flexbox document. Or you could start playing with the properties for the children, right? The flex items. And so we're going to explore that in the next videos, what those different properties and values do for both the container and for the flex items, right? The immediate direct children of the container. So hopefully you're like stoked. Hope you're totally stoked. I'm totally stoked. Like, I love it. Flexbox is great. So let's start exploring the properties and values and see what we can do with it.